There we go. Okay, so we're in Joshua 10. It's kind of a big chapter, so we're going to move along at a decent clip here. Then, before I forget, I'm canceling next week. I had thought about keeping it, but then I realized what I'm going to be doing next is grouping chapters together because we have multiple chapters that are like Joshua conquered blah, 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 blah. You know, these are all the kings that were conquered, blah, 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 blah. So we need to start grouping chapters together at this point. So the next grouping is going to be 11 to 13. That's going to be the next one. So I wanted just some extra time to kind of handle more. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. All right, do we want to go around and read? We can do like 4 verses apiece, and then I'll take what's left. Lindsay, you want to start?
Sure. I don't think I'm going to say this right, but Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had captured and completely destroyed Ai and killed its king, just as he had destroyed the town of Jericho and killed its king. He also learned that the Gibeonites had made peace with Israel and were now their allies. He and his people became very afraid, and they heard all this because Gibeon was a large town, as large as the royal cities and larger than Ai, and the Gibeonite men were strong warriors. So King Adonizedek of Jerusalem sent messengers to several other kings, Hoham of Hebron, Hiram of Jarmuth, Japhiah of Lachish, and Debir of Eglon. Come and help me destroy Gibeon, he urged them, for they have made peace with Joshua and people of Israel. And I need glasses too.
So the 5 Amorite kings, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, joined forces, advanced with all their armies, besieged Gibeon, and fought against it. Then the men of Gibeon sent word to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal. Don't give up on your servants. Come quickly and save us. Help us, for all the Amorite kings living in the hill country have joined forces against us. So Joshua and all his troops, including all his best soldiers, came from Gilgal. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them, for I have handed them over to you. Not one of them will be able to stand against you.
After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, who defeated them to a great victory at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road, going up to Beth Horon, and cut them all down the way to Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel on the road down from Beth Horon to Azekah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them from the sky, and more of them died than the hailstones than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, O sun, stand still over Gibeon, O moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it was written in the book of Tishar.
The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. Now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave at Makkedah. When Joshua was told that the 5 kings had been found hiding in the cave at Makkedah, he said, Roll large rocks up to the mouth of the cave and post some men there to guard it.
But stay not ye, pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Suffer them not to enter into your cities, for Jehovah your God hath delivered them into your hand. And it came to pass when Joshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, till they were consumed, and the remnant and the remnant which remained of them had entered into fortified cities, that all the people returned to the camp to Joshua at Makkedah in peace. None moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel.
Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me. So they brought the 5 kings out of the cave, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lishish, and Eglon. When they had brought these kings to Joshua, he summoned all the men of Israel and said to the army commanders who had come with him, come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings. So they came forward and placed their feet on their necks.
Joshua said to them, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to all of the enemies you are going to fight. Then Joshua put the kings to death and exposed their bodies on 5 poles, and they were left hanging on the poles until sunset. At sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the poles and threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day. That day Joshua took Makkedah. He put the city and its king to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho.
Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Makkedah to Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king into Israel's hand. The city and everyone in it Joshua put to the sword. He left no survivors there. And he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Libnah to Lachish. He took up positions against it and attacked it.
That was 33, right?
Yeah, no, that was 31. Yeah, so now you're ready for 32, I think.
Here again, the Lord gave from Lachish. Joshua took on the second day and killed everyone in it, just as he had done at Libnah. During the attack on Lachish, King Horam of Gezer arrived with his army to help defend the town, but Joshua's men killed him and his army, leaving no survivors. Then Joshua and the Israelite army went on to Eglon and attacked it. They captured it that day and killed everyone in it. He completely destroyed everyone, just as he had done at Lachish.
And Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron, and they fought against it. And they captured it and struck it and its king with all its cities and all the persons who were in it with the edge of the sword. He left no survivor, according to all that he had done to Eglon. And he utterly destroyed it and every person who was in it. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to Debir, and they fought against it. And he captured it and its king and all its cities, and they struck them with the edge of the sword, and utterly destroyed every person who was in it. He left no survivor. Just as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and its king, as he had also done to Libnah and its king.
Thus Joshua struck all the land, the hill country, and the Negev, and the lowland, and the slopes, and all their kings. He left no survivor, but he utterly destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea, even as far as Gaza, and all the country of Goshen, even as far as Gibeon. Joshua captured all these kings and their lands at one time, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. So Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. Okay, long chapter. Thank you for getting that through. You guys did good. All right, so let's go through our rough outline. I think we need it with this one. A lot happened. we have the king of Jerusalem, and he's joined forces with 4 other kings, and together they attack Gibeon. And so then Gibeon asks Joshua for help. Joshua and all of his army men march all night long to reach Gibeon, and God causes all of the armies to be confused, and he also sends hailstones onto the enemy. The 5 kings hide in the cave, but are later found and executed by Joshua. And so then Israel defeats all 5 armies, and he goes on to conquer the South Canaan area. I think our map is going to be very helpful today.
Ooh, where'd we get this map?
Denise brought that in.
There's a whole bunch from my old church. I don't know how I ended up with them really, but
Cool.
yeah.
All right, let's see if we can find everything here. Can you guys see what the chairs? Let me move the chairs. Okay. All right, let's see. Here's Jericho and Gilgal. There's Ai. So remember, they went from Jericho to Ai, and they were staying back at the camp at, well, one of the Gilgals. There's Gilgal here, and there's a Gilgal here. And if you remember, after they defeated Jericho, and then after they defeated Ai, they went up to, where are you? Here we go, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, and that's where they read the law. And so now they're at a camp in Gilgal. I don't know which Gilgal it is, but it was a Gilgal. And then let's see here. Here's Gibeon, right here. And then you've got Jerusalem. That's the Adoni-Zedek guy. Then you've also got his friends Jarmuth, Eglon, Hebron. What's he doing? Lachish. Where are you, Lachish? Here you go, Lachish. So really covers majority of the southern Canaan area. And together they were going to be coming up against Gibeon. And then when we read later on that Joshua and his men chased the men, so the men are trying to run back to their fortified cities because they know that they're losing. So they're chasing them all the way through here. Where does it say? It says to Makeda, right here, and that's where the cave was, where the 5 kings were hiding. And Azekah, right? Is that one of the places? I'm pretty sure. So here, does it mention another spot? I was trying to find all the places on the map. So in verse 11 is where it talks about, okay, in the descent of Beth Horon. Let's see if we can find Beth Horon. Here is Beth Haggerin, Beth Shemesh. There's a lot of Beths. Beth Horon, here we go. Right there. And yep, Azekah and Makeda. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all the places that we can find on a map here. What are your guys' thoughts or questions about this chapter? Sorry, Sarah, you don't got the map.
I am.
Bloody.
Yeah. What happened?
Why did people use hailstones?
Why did what now?
They use hailstones.
Oh,
That one.
yeah. That it is totally out of blue, isn't it? Yeah.
It was interesting, the sun never set that one day.
Yes.
Yeah. What
That
was
is,
going
that's
on
really
there?
unique.
Yeah.
And I thought it was weird because it said that was the only time that happened, and I thought there was one time where somebody couldn't hold his arms up, so other people had held his.
Yes, that was Moses.
Held his arms up,
Yep.
so that was different than this, right?
Yeah, it's a different,
It said that only happened once, and I thought, hold it, I remember another time.
yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe, let's see
But I
here.
didn't go back.
Or is
and
it
look
the
at it.
combination of the moon staying in place
Right,
and the sun? Sun stood still over Gibeon and the moon over the valley of Ajalon.
oh, in verse 14, there was no day like that before or after when the Lord listened to the voice of a man. I think that's what it's emphasizing, is that because Joshua asked God of that. He told God, stop the sun, stop the moon. That's a totally different,
Okay,
yeah, I think that's what the emphasis is on.
okay. 'Cause I
Yeah, good,
Thought the same thing.
I didn't
Really
look
good
it up
point
to
on that,
see
though.
when the other time was, but,
yeah, you're right, it was Moses.
yeah.
And it's interesting because Joshua was there too. Joshua was the commander of the army at that time. And when they were fighting against the Amalekites, I think, and they were losing. And, Moses was up on the hill and he was praying and he, as long as his arms were raised and then
Good.
yeah.
His arms got tired.
and that's right, yeah. And so Aaron and Hur stood beside him to raise his arms and probably lost feeling in his arms. But they won, so. Good thought, Lois, I like that. What else? Anybody else?
There was a small remnant that did get away,
Yes,
which is very unusual
it is unusual.
in this circumstance.
You're right.
And didn't he say at first that no one would be left
Yeah, that's,
in early chapter 10?
well, they were to slay them all, and sounds like these guys got inside the fortified city, but I thought, well, that shouldn't have stopped them.
Do you mean verse 8, Sarah, where God tells Joshua not one of them will stand
Yeah,
before you?
yeah.
Are there other translations of that verse?
So what
Verse 8.
Mine says stand up to you.
Stand up to you, okay.
I don't know if that means like, would they not attack again or be a problem again versus being dead? That sounds a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a good point. Does it actually mean not one will be left alive, or does it mean something else? Like, not one of them will, like you said, be a problem ever again, not one will, I don't know.
They'll retreat,
Mm.
maybe.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could mean something else. Stuff.
So really, there's kings of cities. I don't know that I really realized that.
Oh, really? Yeah, so within the nation of Canaan, I guess, or maybe it's not even a nation, it's a land area, it's a land region. And then you've got these kingdoms, if you will, I guess, all with their kings.
But are you talking about the things that are different colored there that are each a thing, or are you talking about?
No, the different
Jerusalem.
colors here are actually later on when the land is split up between all the tribes. So you
Okay.
can see Ephraim, Manasseh,
Okay,
et cetera. That's to show that, and we'll use that later on when we get to that point.
okay.
To that part, yeah. So, but for right now, we're just using this to see where is everything,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Also, what's interesting about looking at a map here is to see, I'm sorry, Lindsay, to see the route that they have taken. Okay, remember, now my map doesn't go down that far. Do we have a map that goes down farther? Need help? Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Thank you. Let's see. I wanted to use this, it's really small though. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yes, this is it right here. This actually shows the Exodus. So where they started, and they made their way across the Red Sea here, all the way through, they're into the wilderness here, and all the way up. There's Kadesh Barnea, and then they end up doing a whole lot of wandering. And then here we go. Now they're finally making their way up into Canaan here. But notice the route that they take, they don't go up through this way, which would be here. On this map, see this C here? That's this right here. They go around this way, all the way up to, thank you. We're taking really good care of them. They have gloves on next time. I think, yeah, okay, that's enough weight to, thank you. Yeah. My lovely assistant Linda. Okay, take a look. They come all the way up here to Jericho, which is like almost a halfway point with Canaan. And then what do? They cut right through the middle. Jericho, Ai, Gibeon, they cut right through the middle. And then what do? They conquer the south. They're going to divide and conquer. That's their incredible military tactic here. And I read in one of my commentaries that a British field marshal, Edmund Allenby, used the same tactic when he liberated Palestine in World War I. He did the exact same thing. Divide and then conquer one and then conquer the other. So, pretty effective military tactic. I thought that was pretty cool. One of the questions that I had was Joshua obligated to help Gibeon? Or could he have just been like, too bad, sorry. I don't know. That was just a question that I had was he obligated?
Isn't that the people that made the judgment?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So he was obligated to keep his word.
What are the parameters of the covenant? We won't attack you, you won't attack us. Does it cover what happens when somebody else attacks one of the parties?
Well, it did in their opinion, from what it said.
Yes.
I mean, they kind of said, honor your covenant, come and help us.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to agree. I think that there is a level of obligation, but that was a question that I first had when I was reading it was, what are the...
So you were referring that the covenant was that Joshua would not attack them.
Yeah, he wouldn't destroy them.
That he had indicated, and we will be your protectors.
Right.
Now,
How far does that covenant go? You know? Is he helping them because he actually wants to help them, or because he has to help them? That was kind of my question.
or did they show up later in time as any kind of an ally? Or is that the end of the book, we don't know yet?
No, kind of. I don't know about ally, but they are not a problem.
Yeah, it says they lived among them,
Right.
so it sounded like they kind of meshed even,
Yeah.
not just,
They
This
really
is-
integrated.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they did, exactly. And I wonder, I mean, who knows how much time is passing? When we're reading this from one story to the next, it seems like, okay, next day, you know.
Yeah,
So it's hard for us to know how much time has passed between where Gibeon is brought into this covenant and they're made into servants and they're being integrated into Israel. How much time has passed, because it could be that they truly were a part of Israel at this point. Yeah.
Did you find Gaza on that one?
Found Gezer. Is
Yeah.
that close enough?
They don't call it like Gezer today.
Where did you say, Lindsay?
It's in the yellow, like on the edge by Judah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Oh, so they went,
Stand up.
conquered Gaza too.
Yeah, you're right. That is another one of the,
And
right here.
I assume that's the same Gaza as today.
I think so. I would have to double check on that for you though.
And Joshua and his troops conquered way down to Gaza,
Yes,
and Gaza also.
yes, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. That was another name that was on there. So they went, I mean, they went all the way from here, where are we? Gibeon, way down.
And so Gaza was part of Canaan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all of that is Canaanite land. Yep. It is really close to the wilderness that they wandered in. It's very close to that edge there. Okay.
So as they're fighting and conquering and traveling, is the whole population with them?
No,
Or is it just the fighting?
it's
men
just the,
that they're taking?
yes. So as you keep reading, you'll see moments where Joshua will take his men and they'll go and conquer a bunch of area, a large area, and then they'll go back to the camp at Gilgal. So we saw that Joshua was at that camp when he started, and then he took his men with him, and they went. Yep, exactly. I would have been really, really interested to see, you know how like in every other chapter, they're always recording numbers of people that died, numbers of people who were fighting, numbers of people of this. I would have loved to see the numbers for this fight, because you've got Joshua and however many men he took with him against 5 collective armies. I would have loved to see those numbers. I think that would have been very, very cool. Sadly, I guess we'll have to wait. Add it to the list of questions.
That's probably not gonna be my number one.
No, probably not. No. Number 2? No.
Not in the top 10.
Oh, man. All right, fair enough. Translation changes. Did anybody notice anything when we were reading?
I didn't know where she was.
I didn't either.
You look away 1 second or 2 different sounds and it's hard to get back.
I do know how to read, it's just I didn't know where she was.
I had to look up a word or two to make sure instead of it saying, what, he disorientated them? or
Confused them, yeah.
discomfited them.
Whoa.
Discomfited.
They
What
weren't
verse
comfy
is
anymore.
that? What verse?
No, this is new,
In there.
Verse 10.
standard, it's
New American
standard.
Standard.
It's usually quite accurate, someone gave it to us and.
Discomfited. We should all add that to our everyday
I've got New
language.
American Standard, and that's not mine.
I'm discomfited today. I like it. I think mine says confounded.
Mhm.
That's pretty simple. It threw him into a panic.
That'll do,
There we
yeah.
That's the best picture ever.
Yeah.
That I can picture.
Yeah. Yours says what? Threw them into a panic.
Oh.
Yours says that?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I thought you said it should say
No,
that.
it did. That really does.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. This is the Bible for deaf dogs. It really is. No, discomfited, don't have to Google it.
It expands my vocabulary.
It does,
Yes,
you're
it
right.
does.
I like that.
Scramble things.
Yeah, there you go. You'll win for sure.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I noticed was, I think one said, listen to a man, and mine said, answer to such a prayer.
Mm-hmm. That I think is really interesting because you can get a different idea of God listened to a man. That says something different, doesn't it? It says like, God had no choice but to listen to him or something like that, you know?
And mine says human being.
Okay, what verse is that?
14.
What's yours say?
Answer. There has never been a day like this one before or since when the Lord answered such a prayer.
That's what mine says too.
There's been times where other men of God, they say, he rebuked God. God was gonna destroy someone or a nation, and God changed his mind. To me, that's similar, but, I mean, I'm not gonna argue with what's written here, but,
Area. Categories, I
That one-
guess.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Of course,
really good point.
This was asking God to control, I mean, this was controlling nature. That to me is maybe the difference.
Could be, or even just the way it was said, where, okay, you're thinking of Moses, right? Where Moses, you know, tells God,
Yeah,
don't destroy them,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
think of your great name.
Yeah.
That was like a, how do I put it, like, it was like he's trying to talk God out of it.
Right.
This is not trying to talk God out of anything or into anything. He just simply said, he even just like,
He talked directly to the sun and moon.
right,
Without permission,
yeah,
in a
that's,
way.
it does say in verse 12, Joshua spoke to the Lord.
Oh,
So I'm not sure what part of it is that, but he just straight up said this,
and
make that happen.
he did it in the sight of
Yes.
the nation, which I'm sure was significant.
Very.
That reconfirms his power
Yeah.
under God or his authority.
Yeah, yep. That's really laying it all out on the line, isn't
No
it?
kidding.
Yeah. Okay, let's skip people and roles, and just briefly hit cross-references. In Habakkuk 3:11, it references this moment where God causes the sun and moon to stand still. That's pretty interesting. And then where it talks about, where Joshua invites his captains to put their feet on the necks of the kings. There's lots of references in the Bible about either making your enemies, enemies being made a footstool or foot on the enemy's neck. Obviously, the first time we saw that was in Genesis 3, where God is speaking to the snake, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And then we also see the prophetic word of King David, Psalm 110. The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. And who is at the right hand of the Father but Jesus? And so that is telling us that one day his enemies will be forever conquered. So, okay. Let's just kind of go through this and do our summary with the time that we have left. Any other thoughts or questions before we dive into this?
I thought it was maybe, I'm not sure what word to use, when he had his leaders come out and physically put their boot on the king's neck. And that probably must have really been a picture. I mean, here are kings, and I was gonna ask, do we know how royal those were? We don't probably, if they were, I mean, how they became kings of those cities or
Yeah.
whatever, but for a lowly soldier to put their boot on a king's neck.
Yeah.
But that to me would have given those military leaders such an image of this is what God promised to do.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of visuals you'd think would really stick with it, and obviously it's mentioned other places.
Yeah, absolutely. They're probably thinking of God's promises that he's made to them all along the way. And all of a sudden, there they are in this moment, and they're realizing, wow, that's exactly as he promised us.
Well, and God put those kings under, I mean, they probably thought they were top dog.
Oh, yeah,
Being the kings.
I'm
but
sure. God
brings rulers down
Mhm.
where he wants them.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. I like that. Okay, so we see in the first couple of verses this king of Jerusalem, Adoni-Zedek, or however you say his name. He's got quite the name. He's got two really good reasons to be afraid. First, we see Israel has been carving its way victoriously through Canaan, separating the north from the south. That's got to strike fear into the hearts of the people in the area. They can see what's coming. And furthermore, this city of Gibeon, which as we saw in verse 2, that it was a great city, like one of the royal cities. It had mighty men, and they surrendered and allied themselves with Israel. I mean, that speaks volumes. So, verses 3 to 5, the king knows they're not going to stand a chance, so he calls on 4 other kings that are in this southern region area to join forces and to create one super army. He's like, this is our last chance. And so, even though all the kings are afraid, they're still very clever. I thought it was very interesting that they attacked Gibeon instead of going after Israel directly. What do you guys think? Do you think do you think there was a specific reason? Do you think there was multiple reasons for this? I thought that was kind of interesting. They went after the traitors, I guess. Yeah. Thought that was interesting. Maybe it was like a warning to other nations. This is what happens if you try to ally yourself with Israel or something like that. Or maybe they were too afraid to attack Israel directly, and so they were going to attack they made them into servants, right? Gibeon became servants. So we're like, we'll just take out their servants and any kind of ally help that they possibly have.
Or if they would have conquered them, then they might have been forced into duty.
Right. Yep, definitely. So then verses 6 to 7, we see that word reaches Joshua. He's at the Gilgal camp. And he hears about this attack on Gibeon. And, Gibeon, it was this mighty city, but it was no match for 5 collective armies. And so they look to Joshua as their helper, their protector, and they send a call for help. And I really liked in verse 6 where it says, "Do not abandon your servants. Come up to us and save us and help us." That really reminds me of the language in the Psalms. You hear that a lot of times. Don't forsake your people. Do not forsake me. Help me, deliver me. Those kinds of words and phrases in the language. So we see Gibeon petitioning to Joshua for salvation based on the oath, the covenant that's between them. And King David does the same thing. He petitions the Lord to save his people or to save him personally, depending on the situation, based on God's covenant promise to uphold his people. And we have that same blessing, I guess I would call it, to be able to petition, because if you guys remember in Hebrews, it talks about how Jesus is the guarantor of a better covenant, and that he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him. And so we're able to petition to him for salvation as well. And then also I want you to notice Joshua's response to Gibeon's cry for help. Like I was saying earlier, what was his obligation in this moment? But I think that there's more to it here. He's weighing the pros and cons that he's facing in that moment. If he takes his army up to help Gibeon, he's risking the lives of men, his own men, the men that he needs to win this war. Here's a scenario. What if Gibeon is a great distraction? Because now with these 5 armies that are attacking Gibeon, guess what? That's 5 cities that are left defenseless. He can go and take care of all those cities that are left defenseless, and we'll see what happens to Gibeon. They may or may not make it. If they don't make it, great, that takes care of an oath that was awful to begin with. It was quite an unfortunate oath to begin with.
Gideon didn't have warriors though, did they?
It did, yes.
They did?
Mhm.
They were they became their servants.
Yeah,
They didn't
They
have
have-
what?
they had,
Warriors.
Warriors.
it said they had mighty
I said
men.
lawyers.
Same thing.
They can talk their way out of it.
Seemed like it came out of nowhere.
So when they made that covenant with Gibeon,
Mhm.
they didn't have to forsake all their weapons?
Who?
Gibeon.
Gibeon didn't have
When
to first.
Joshua,
They stayed, I don't know. Because,
they became the woodcutters and, what was the other thing?
water
Water
drawers.
carriers for, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't tell you the details of that.
Yeah, were they defenseless is what you mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing.
because-
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
I see,
Yeah.
That's
okay.
what I'm saying, cause mine says, you're calling themselves their servants and when asking for help and so.
That's a good question, because it does say that they have mighty men, but were their mighty men armed? Is that the question? Because it says, in verse 2, Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. So,
Mine says strong warriors.
okay,
I missed that.
yeah.
Or did
That's a
you?
good question about, as far as like weapons go, I have no idea. That's
I guess if you're a mighty warrior, you still need a weapon.
Yeah. I think that.
Kung Fu or something.
They could throw their wood axe.
There you go.
First axe throwing.
That's great, I like it.
And when you were saying that Joshua was weighing all that, but you get to verse 8 and God takes the fear out of that
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Mhm.
That's how
I see it as he has to make a decision, but then, like you said, in verse 8, God says to Joshua, I've given them into your hands. This is an opportunity for me to show my power and to give you the victory. So, because it doesn't say, something that we don't see in this chapter is Joshua seeking the Lord for guidance, or even God telling Joshua what the plan is. Like in other times with Jericho, God told Joshua the plan. At Ai, God told Joshua the plan, an ambush. We don't see that, either of those things here. But what we do see is, it's almost like Joshua's kind of got it figured out now. He knows enough, he's been through enough of this now to kind of know what's happening. And the same with God. He tells Joshua, don't be afraid, you'll have your victory. That command, do not fear, don't be afraid, we keep seeing that reoccurring here in this book. Why do you think that's so important that God says that over and over and over?
I think before each battle, it's reminding them who's winning the battle.
Yes, absolutely.
It's that constant reminder. That's why I think he used hailstones to prove I'm the one doing this.
And it even says that the hailstones killed way more
Yeah.
than what Joshua and his men were able to do. That's pretty impressive. That's
So
accuracy.
he's still greater.
Yeah, right, exactly. This is God waging this war and winning this war.
Wonder if God just had fun that day.
Well, we know one thing, God's a good shot. He doesn't miss.
When I picture this, like, all those kings going against Israel, I think that's exactly how Satan used his power against Jesus. And that in the end, when we get to see that wonderful battle, it's like they foolishly really do believe they've got the edge.
Yeah.
And I can see why the 5 kings would have thought that, but, I mean, Satan, he deceives himself, it seems to me, if he really believes that he is going to win.
Yeah, that it's so bizarre for us to understand that, but I think you might be onto something there. He's so good of a liar, he's got himself tricked here. Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe he knows and he just wants to do it anyway. I don't know.
I don't know.
Something else that I was thinking about with God telling Joshua, do not fear, and always reminding him of that, is remember, why did the first generation of people, of the Israelites, not be able to enter the land?
They were afraid.
They were afraid. And that fear led to unbelief. It was a hindrance to them and their belief that God keeps his promises and has the victory. And so we see that God is reminding Joshua over and over so that he's not hindered by fear, so that his fear does not lead to unbelief. And I think that we can kind of take a lesson here as well. I mean, for Joshua, it was believing that God would overcome his enemies and, give them the land that's promised. But what about for believers today? What are some of the things that we have fear about that would lead to unbelief? Not unbelief in general, but just like, for example, money. I don't know that God's going to provide everything that I need. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes to take care of myself, to provide for myself. And that's fear leading to an unbelief that God can provide. Things like that.
Real practical, everyday things
Right.
is where we muddle in there.
Yeah.
Because we're pretty sure God ain't gonna take care of this.
Right.
I think of my mom telling me after my dad died, she was still living in Arizona with her sprinkler system for her little bit of grass, I guess. And it wasn't working, and it was a big deal to her. And she didn't have money to call somebody, like a repair guy. She said, so I prayed about it, and God helped me figure that out. And I thought, I would never do that, Mom. That's that practical leaning on God. That's such a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who would ask God to fix the sprinkler?
Yeah.
Arlene.
Yeah, Arlene. So,
I love that. That's exactly it. The little things as well as the big things.
yeah.
Yeah. I even thought, what about surrendering our life in the course of our life? That's a hard one to give up sometimes.
Or your kids.
Or your kids. Yeah. Heaven forbid they become like a pastor's wife or something,
Pretty scary.
It is. Yeah. Okay, verses 9 to 11, we see Joshua have this response of faith. Common sense says people need to sleep if you're going to endure in battle. That's not what happened here. Joshua really trusted that God was going to strengthen his people in the battlefield. And, he heard God's promise of victory, and he responded in faith by marching all night. Interesting factoid here, the march from Gilgal to Gibeon involved a climb of 3,300 feet over 20 miles. That's 8 to 10 hours of hard marching. So they really did march all night. They really did, yeah.
And they had to fight after that.
And then they had to fight as soon as they got there, 5 armies. Yeah. Yeah.
But they had hailstones.
Yeah, you're right. Something that I was thinking about when I was reading about this interesting play out between God telling Joshua, you have victory, and then Joshua having faith and taking this initiative to, God didn't tell him to march all night long. He did that. He chose to do that, and he just trusted that God was gonna do whatever it took to keep his army going, to keep his men going, to give them the victory against 5 armies. And then it was as soon as Joshua and his army got there, that's when God went to work. He confounded, discomfited the armies. He sent hailstones with absolute accuracy. God went to work here. And we see this partnership that's happening between God and Joshua/Israel. And, that's kind of what we see is this, he's waiting to see our initiative sometimes. He's waiting to see our willingness to do work with him, to work alongside him, to partner with him. And I'm reminded of, I just finished the biography of George Mueller. He is the one that was a missionary in Bristol, England, and he started the first orphanages there. They had a terrible cholera swept through the whole area and left a lot of orphans in its wake. And so George went to work building orphanages, and he had nothing. And so he was just asking God, okay, let's do this. I need you to send the money. I need you to send the materials. I need you to send the workers and this and that. And God did. He sent everything that was possibly needed. And this first orphanage, it opened up, and not a single soul came. No child came to register that first day. And George went home to his wife and was just so confused by it, and told his wife, Mary, that nobody came. We have all the things. God answered all of our prayers for all the things. We know he's behind this. How come there's no children? And Mary said, George, we forgot to pray for children. We prayed for all the things and the materials and the money. We forgot to pray for children. And as soon as they started praying for children, the next day they started coming in. And so it's kind of funny to see that. It's another one of those things where you don't think that you have to actually pray for the children to come, but God was waiting for them to pray for the children, and he answered. So
Is this the book where they thanked God for breakfast?
yes,
And they had no food?
they had no food. It was an orphanage of hundreds of children, and they sat down and thanked God for the food that was going to be delivered to them. And a milk cart broke down, and a baker came and said, George, God wouldn't let me sleep until I got up and baked a bunch of bread for you. Yeah. It's an incredible biography. I love that. Okay, we're not out of time here. We're not even halfway through. Okay, let's move on. Verses 12 to 15, we've talked about this, how God has this miraculous hand in action, and it gave Joshua the boldness to ask for an even more remarkable miracle to keep the day going, to keep the sun from setting, and so that Israel would have the time to accomplish this complete victory before darkness fell. And like we noted earlier, how incredible is it that Joshua said all of that in the sight of Israel? Boy, that's pretty amazing, I think. That takes a lot of courage to be able to say that out loud. Yeah.
It's like praying for the breakfast
Like
with all
praying
the
for the
children.
breakfast,
I mean,
yes.
Doing it in front of them.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I'd be
exactly
so
right.
afraid that,
What if,
I or God
Yeah.
is going to disappoint them.
right? Yeah. And then what if that they see, oh, God doesn't provide for me because, whatever, yeah. And then, as you can see in verse 13, where it says, is it not written in the book of Jashar? Joshua's kind of saying, like, you don't believe me? Take a look. It's written in another book. Just, take a look at it. It's there. It actually happened. The book of Jashar, as far as I can tell, is probably a collection or compilation of ancient Hebrew songs and poems that praises the heroes of Israel and their exploits in battle. So that's kind of the best that I can understand of that one. Verses 16 to 27 then it records the completion of the battle. We have the five kings. They fled and hid in a cave in Makkedah. Joshua finds out about it, and so he orders that the cave is all sealed up so that he can finish the battle and they can stay and put, and he'll deal with them later. Once the battle is finished, like you said, we've got these few soldiers that escape, which is interesting. But I think later, if I remember correctly, in further chapters, I think that they end up conquering all of these cities anyway. So anybody that escaped to their city is going to get taken anyway at some point. Just postponed. And then these five kings are dealt with. Joshua, he directs the captains to put their feet on the necks of the men while he's executing them. And so we see this, Joshua sharing the victory with some of his best men. There's that partnership again. They're working together for the pursuit of victory. And after the execution, the bodies are thrown into the very cave that they were hiding in. Their place that was supposed to be their refuge is now their tomb. That's kind of an interesting turn of events there. Real quick, I want to mention this Adoni-Zedek guy. This was in my commentary, and I thought it was kind of interesting. His name means Lord of Righteousness, and yet he is a pagan king. He leads a confederation of kings against God's people to fight against Joshua. He resists God's occupation of the land, and then he ends up hiding in the cave with other kings. Interestingly enough, in Revelation and other areas as well, the Bible talks about a coming false Messiah. And this Messiah, he's going to rule over Jerusalem, or false Messiah. He's going to rule over Jerusalem. He's going to lead a confederation of kings. He's going to fight against Yeshua, or Jesus. He resists Jesus' occupation of the land, and there is a section where they hide in caves. I think that that's pretty interesting. So we see a really cool illustration of Adoni-Zedek, is this picture of the coming Antichrist. But I just thought that was kind of cool. And what do we get from this? God has the victory over his enemies, right? That's the actually I see this as a recurring theme throughout the book as a whole is God has victory over his enemies. And then last of the chapter, verses 28 to 43, it just records all of Israel's conquests of southern Canaan. So you have the fall of Makkedah, that's where the cave was, the fall of Libnah, the fall of Lachish, that's where one of the five kings, fall of Gezer, fall of Eglon, that's another one of the five kings, fall of Hebron, another one of the five kings, and fall of Debir. So we'll see if the other two, I think the other two kings are taken out another time. And then verse 42, I think, is the most important verse of the entire chapter. It says, Joshua captured all these kings and their lands at one time because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. That's the most important takeaway here, for sure. Yeah. So, any other thoughts or questions on this chapter? Okay. So, just as a reminder, next week will be canceled, and then do have chapters 11 to 13 read for the following week. You might want to just keep going. There's a lot of chapters, and we're going to be grouping them together. Let me see what I'm going to be doing. I mapped it out. 11 to 13, 14 and 15, 16 to 19, 20 to 22, 23 to 24. Not terrible. No more than 3 chapters at a time, okay? It didn't go wild. Thought about it. So, okay. Denise, would you mind praying for us?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and we thank you for allowing us to be together and get into your word. And please be with us as we go about the rest of our week. And also as we approach holiday time, allow us time to enjoy being with our families and remember to keep our eyes on the real reason for Christmas. And thank you for sending your son for us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.